Sports Take. What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well out there. That is Tone to Shields. I am Rob Ellis hanging out with you on this Monday, weird Monday, because we're usually all over it with the Eagles, man. Now we are looking forward to the Chiefs game, and oh man, cannot wait. And joining us right now, who better to get us prepped, to set the table, to get us set for this big matchup than the man who does an amazing job covering the Birds for NJ.com. And you can check out all of his work on Twitter/X at C Franklin News, and of course, NJ.com as well. Chris, what's up, my man? Happy Monday.
Hey, happy Monday to you guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
How you doing, Chris?
Of course, sir.
Good to see you.
See you too.
I'm liking that ceiling, man. You're doing some good work there at the crib, wherever you're at. I like it.
Thank you. I call it the bye-week bunker now because we want to just recharge. It's almost like a chamber. You just got to recharge and relax. Mainly sleep, but yeah, recharge and relax from this last day off. But
oh my God! All right, well, Chris, let's look at it. So we've all talked about what's coming up here. So it's Kansas City at 7-2. It's Buffalo who could move to 6-4 tonight. They play tonight. Then it's San Francisco 6-3. Then it's Dallas 6-3. Then it's Seattle 6-3. That's what's next for you, realistically. What are you looking at here? What's fair? What keeps them in really good shape to get that 1 seed in your estimation?
Realistically, if they go 2-3, I think they go 2-3 in that, because I look at the Chiefs game. It's tough to play at Arrowhead. That with that raucous crowd, and they still, when you look at Travis Kelce and what they've had issues with in the middle of the field, I look as a potential worry. Then also you look at the Cowboys, where you go AT&T Stadium, where they have issues in the past, that I look as a loss, and then going against a team where they historically have had issues with the Seattle Seahawks. They having to go across country. I saw Seattle yesterday, and they look like they're beatable, but still, it's an area where you had issues. So that's why I had the third loss there. I think that even still with that back three of the Giants, Cardinals, Giants, I think they can still get the 1 seed with all that as well too. It's gonna be tougher. You probably have to play everybody in the final week of the season because Detroit, I think, still going in it. But
yeah, I
think 2 or 3. We're looking at a 2-3 stretch coming up here. Hey, if they get 3-2 or 4-1, it's great.
Those last 3 are cupcakes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I see Franklin, my brother. Thank you for coming on to the platform. Really appreciate you. With that 5-game stretch still in mind, right? And everything we know about this Philadelphia Eagles team over the past several weeks and how they played, the good, the bad, the ugly. What do you believe is on the priority list for the Philadelphia Eagles over this bye week?
Oh, fix that back 7 for sure. I look at the offensively. I look at the way that I think they still could play better, but I think I feel a lot more confident because it's little things here and there we're not hitting. That back 7, you still see some communication issues where guys are running free in that area. I still look at that intermediate route in between the numbers, between like 10, 15 yards. I feel like teams can take advantage of it. And then the slot corner issue. I know you got Bradley Roby coming back. It may take a little bit for him to get reacclimated. I think that's your best bet to fix a lot of those issues that you see inside there. And I think, especially with him being a veteran, we hope it just comes just like that. But until that happens, until we see it for sure, you still got to worry about the question. So I think that communication and fixing up that scheme in the back 7 with the safeties, talking to the cornerbacks, talking to the linebackers, and getting all that right with that matchup, I think that's going to be the big key.
Chris, let me ask you, we saw yesterday San Francisco appeared to be a team that bye really helped, man. They came out and they handed it to Jacksonville, right? The Eagles look like a team between Hurts' knee, between a bunch of 30-something-year-old players that you're counting on in a big way, right? Bayard getting an extra week to get really acclimated, ingrained in the system. I mean, how big in your estimation is when this thing hit at the timing of the bye for the Eagles going into this game against the Chiefs?
I think it was huge. I think especially with the Hurts knee part, when you look at that, because when you have him fully healthy, that opens up that threat of the run a little better. Because I think teams know, like, you just saw him limping and they're like, all right, you know what? He's probably not going to pull the ball as much as he did beforehand. And you don't have to take account because he brings a defender or two with him when he runs that, opens up that running game. So that helps that up. So you look at Bone Bruce, especially who's basically all pain management, that helps out just having an extra week where he's just sitting back a little bit more and not taking that wear and tear on it. So I think, if anything, I think that's the area where it helped out the most health-wise for anybody. And you need that because you want, especially going up as a stretch against these defenses, you want that for that offense, and you want that extra dynamic that he brings, because if you do, that offense, I know it's 2 right now and it's struggling, but you have a healthy Jalen Hurts, the way he's throwing the ball, and now you have that running threat. It's He goes from number 2 to MVP, I think possibly the top tier if he comes out with this like 3-2, 4-1.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, keeping that secondary in mind for a little bit longer, Franklin. I'm curious, what do you believe has been the disconnect with that secondary? There's so many experienced guys back there with Slay, Bradbury, who's not having a good season by any stretch of the imagination. You bring in Kevin Byard. We know they battled some injuries in the spot and at the safety position here and there. But what do you think has been the overall disconnect with the secondary, who has more experience than not?
It's lack of consistency. That's I think is the biggest thing, because when you look at it's like almost like it changes. Like it's like if I'm working next to a beat reporter, I was like, okay, I'm used to this, and you figure this one too. Next week, oh yeah, I'm just somebody else. Okay, let's do this. Another week, somebody else. Like, what's going on? I can't get any consistency. What's going on? I can't get any traction here. So I think that's a lot going on there. I mean, I talked to a couple of guys, and they say when you have that mixture of young guys that came in there, along with those veterans, they maybe feel like they're overcompensating a bit sometimes, trying to help make sure they're okay. And then meanwhile, when you start having a guy think I have to do maybe a job and a half to help these guys out, instead of just doing the regular job, you start to get it gets tougher, and then guys start freelancing a little bit, and then you start seeing those breaks. So that's the biggest thing. If they don't have any consistency, as long as they stay healthy on the outside, I'm not worried so much about Bradbury and Slay. Maybe as a lot of other people, I think they're going to be fine. I'm just worried about. I just think they need to stay healthy everywhere else as a consistency, so they can build that chemistry, build everything else to help them around there and get used to what they're seeing and help that communication out there.
Yeah, Chris, I'm with you. I mean, keep that D line healthy, because if you think about it from this standpoint, I mean, they may not be quite. Actually, they're in pretty good shape to get to where they got to last year in terms of sacks. I don't think they'll get that number, but it'll be close. And they're the best team against the run, which is, last year that wasn't the case, and we saw it in the Super Bowl. They got hurt, with the running game in the Super Bowl. So you keep that D line healthy. To me, I agree with you. Obviously, the secondary's got to be better. There's no doubt, but that's the key to this whole thing, man. I mean, other than Hurts, obviously.
Yeah, you look at D line. I mean, there's so many guys even a guy like Josh Sweat, who you see Hassan Reddick, he's doing his normal thing. He's at a better rate that looks like it is right now. Maybe he's motivated by seeing those numbers that are getting thrown around for those pass rushers. Hey, I do the same thing too. You look on the inside, the interior. You got Jalen Carter, you got Jordan Davis, who's playing like the first round draft pick you envision him to be at, not only just his running game but the pass game. You have so many pieces on this defensive line that if you just have them not take a heavy snap load, they're good. And you can see the impact that they have. They start wearing down teams. If you make them one-dimensional, especially when you know it's passing down, the only thing I would love to see is them to get more pressure and more consistency stopping the teams on first down, so it's not so much 2nd and 5, 2nd, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, because we pretty much we'd see what happens when it's a team 3rd and 8, and you know that, and you kept them behind the sticks. They get their ears back, and we've seen what happens in the pressures and hurries and everything. So if they snap that up, that defensive line, that's probably the best unit on his team.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't really agree more with you, Chris. I'm thinking about the linebackers, right? And the linebacker room has kind of been fascinating to watch over the past several weeks, because Nakobe Dean came in game 1, gets hurt, couldn't finish the game. Then Nicholas Morrow comes in, a guy that they cut, during the offseason, and then he comes back and he fills in, and he's just pretty much stabilized the position along with Zach Cunningham. And then Nakobe Dean gets healthy again, and then they take out Nicholas Morrow. And to me at least, it felt like they've been trying to force feed us Nakobe Dean, and then he gets hurt again, and now Nicholas Morrow is going to have the bulk of the snaps, at least for the foreseeable future. What's been your overall evaluation of the linebacker position, how the Philadelphia Eagles have handled it over the past several weeks, all things considered?
I thought it was very telling, especially against that Cowboys game where you saw Dean coming off the bench to start out with. It made me wonder either, A, was that foot really not, and I know it's the other one, but has that really affected him not being the player that he really was beforehand? Or B, is Nicholas Morrow outplayed Nakobe Dean, which is a bigger question in itself? Because I like the threat that Morrow has, especially when he can give you that blitz and that A gap. I see he could do a lot of things to create another element to get pressure on his quarterback. But the fact that you have to use that against a guy who you thought was going to be your 3-down lineman, who's unavailable again because he's hurt, is very telling. And now you cannot afford another injury whatsoever. I mean, you look at Morrow. I think Zach Cunningham's been the best linebacker this team has had in the last couple of years. I mean, I like DJ Edwards a lot. I like Kaiser Edwards a lot. But look at the way the dynamic that he's been playing, not only just against the run but the pass. I think he's been great. So that was a good find by Howie Roseman. I'm worried about the depth for sure, because if he gets nicked up and dinged up, he's not to be effective. Now you're relying on Christian Ellis, Ben Van Sumeren, who I know Ben did well in that preseason game. It's like near 20 tackles, but it's a whole different game and thing. So I look overall that position. It's a better collective than what they've had in the past, but it's still a lot of questions. And you get the right offensive coordinator, right play caller, you can really take advantage of them right now. And that's what has me a little worried.
Chris, biggest reason you think the running game has dipped? Is it lack of attempts? Is it Swift hitting the wall a little bit? Is it maybe the offensive line isn't blocking it up as well as we anticipate? I know maybe it coincided with Juergens a little bit. Maybe we're making too much of that. I don't know. What do you think the reasoning is for that?
I think it's twofold. I think you look at when you look at the way Juergens left. I mean, Steen did a little bit better, but I think when you look at the way Juergens left, he not only helped you in that pass. I thought he was a better pass blocker than I envisioned, because I thought he'd get bull rush a little bit more. But he was able to open the runs interiorly too. He used athleticism. He got inside guys' pads, moved them out the way, and created a little bit more running room for them on that right side, as opposed to when you had Opeta in there. But then I also think you still had Jalen Hurts when you don't have that, when he runs that zone read or he runs outside, even threatens to run that fake on the outside. It could be a regular handoff. He takes 2 steps to the right. All of a sudden, you're like, safety's running. Hurts has going right. And then all of a sudden, that little lane that was maybe this big, all of a sudden opens that big, and that's the biggest world of a difference. So I look at those who think Juergens, I think coming back eventually when he's healthy, I think that's a big boost for this offensive line. I think they can get a little bit more running when they run to that side. The left side I'm not worried about. When you look at Landon Dickinson, run me behind 700 yards. I think we all can have about like a good 600, 700 yards in a good season. But,
don't go that far, Chris.
Yeah.
You took it a notch too far, man.
hey, I think, if you I think, we can collectively can get about 70, 80 yards between the three of us for a game. I think so.
Between the three of us, let's hope for 50 yards. But Chris, it's so fascinating, right? We talk about Jalen Hurts' impact on the running game and how not having that threat of him out there kind of really puts a lot of pressure on guys like Swift and Gainwell and Boston Scott whenever he gets touches, so on and so forth. But I want to talk more so about Jalen Hurts' evolution in the passing game. I mean, we're literally seeing this brother really take his game to another level week after week after week. Now, sure, he's battled the turnover bug in the first half of the season, but over the past 3 weeks, he's only turned the ball over one time in an interception. I believe that was against the Miami Dolphins. But other than that, when you really just look at his game in a nutshell, he's been one of the better quarterbacks over the past few weeks in terms of accuracy, in terms of production, in terms of efficiency. What's been your overall evaluation of Jalen Hurts' evolution in the passing game? And, really quickly, if I can throw this in before you answer, guys like Jalen Hurts, that dual threat type of quarterback, typically they don't get to that. Typically they don't start to evolve that part of their game, in the second half of their career, right? They want to run less, pass more. Typically you don't see that until guys get a little deeper into the career. With Jalen Hurts now, I'm curious to know, is this evolution strictly organic, or is it more so injury induced?
I think it's a little bit both. I'll start the evolution part first. I look at that guy who I first saw come in, was working with Marty Morningwig during the COVID year. A guy who was throwing off his back foot, throwing wildly, and I had questions. I really did. And it wasn't until 2021 when I started to see him get more comfortable. He looked a lot more comfortable throwing the ball. And I think the biggest way you could tell a quarterback is if he's confident where he's going and doing that, is look at his feet. He's not getting happy feet. He's not chopping around what's going on? What's going on? I'm not calling any quarterbacks a puppy or whatever, but you see a puppy, he's like, what's this? What's this? And you see that. And he looks settled. He looks calm. He looks confident in that pocket. And I think a lot of that had to do with when he suffered that first injury last year with that ankle. And then now you see with his knee, I think he looks back at that experience and he's forced to pretty much be in that pocket a lot more. And he's still confident. He knows the system already. He's been in it for a while now. And he knows where his progressions are. And I think he's confident. If you look around, he looks comfortable. He's settling in there. And then when his pressure, of course, he can still run around and make the plays, but I think he does that a long time. So I think a lot of that was induced by that injury, and it forced him to be that. So when he's healthy, he knows that in his back pocket, he always knows he has that elusiveness, he can get out the pocket, but he knows now that he's comfortable enough that if I have to stay in the pocket, I have to make some plays, if I have to put that ball in a tight spot from within the pocket toward the sideline, I can do that. As you see with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, he's able to do that. So he's come a long, long way from that guy that was drafted, and you got to credit him for working on that part of his game.
Chris, how do you view the absence that they're going to have without Goddard? Is it Albert O? Is it Stahl being a little bit more offensively, inclined, other than just the blocking, which he's good at? Calcaterra involved a little bit. Who do you see stepping up here, or is it just a matter of more touches maybe for the wideouts?
I look more Julio Jones, Olamide Zaccheaus. I look at those two guys, especially the passing game, because you wish you had. And maybe when you look at Albo, maybe he did that. And in the past, we saw he had like 500 yards receiving that. I was worried about the blocking a little bit, and I hope he's become a better blocker in that aspect. But it's almost a part where it's pretty much just going to be a tell, because when you have stolen the field, we saw Jalen target him a few times. I want to say he had like 11 catches last year, something like that. You see that, and you're like, okay, if he can at least get a catch, 2, 3 catches a game.
Honest, it's not always a run when he's on the field, basically.
Yeah. And now I'm worried about without Goddard on the field, not only does he set things up by the way he runs his routes on the outside to set these other wide receivers up, I'm worried about the middle of the field and teams double teaming Smith and Brown. So now that's going to rely on that middle of the field. I think and I've seen a little bit of time where you see like Julio Jones and Zaccheaus really when they take Goddard off the field and they have him on there, he runs those type of routes in the middle of the field. So I have confidence in those two. Will you get the yards after the catch like you did with the other ones? I think you lose it, because I thought Goddard was really well running the ball after catching screens. But I think between the production you get from Goddard, Jones, occasionally Stowe, maybe Alvaro. I mean, anything you get from Alvaro, Calcaterra, or Stowe is just a cherry on the top. But if you get that same production from those guys, I think they'll be fine. But I'm really worried about teams starting to double them on the outside now and affecting that offense.
Chris, earlier in the show, we brought up this 5-game stretch, right? Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. We brought that up, and this is by everyone's estimation, right, going to be the toughest stretch of the season. Everyone's saying gauntlet. Everyone's saying murderer's row, so on and so forth, right? When you hear people say this stretch has an opportunity to define the Philadelphia Eagles 2023 season and Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, how do you respond to that? How do you digest that?
I look at it as it's a big thing. I think it's a good test for the playoffs. I really do, because even though this team has a lot of veterans there, each team is different. Each team has a different identity. Sometimes you don't know until more like around this time of year what type of team you have. If they can find a way to even all 5 of these games be competitive, not get blown out, really, really assert themselves one way or another, show that aggressiveness or show that they're a tough physical team throughout that stretch, and they can really impose their will on these teams, I think you start to look at this team a lot different, because I think there's a lot of questions because it wasn't the dynamic blowouts of last year. You see them in the schedule. Oh, it's a cake schedule last year. Now you see the schedule and you come out this way, you're like, all right, damn, this is actually a really good team. Like, you got to worry about that. Like, you see that, and I think that will add the legend to that. But yeah, I think if this team somehow goes, I mentioned beforehand, if this team goes like 4-1, 3-2 through that stretch, and even if say the losses are say by like 7 points or less, or even very close, like a field goal or less, you really have to seriously look at Jalen Hurts being the MVP and seriously being an MVP candidate for that one. You have to look at Nick Sirianni getting a lot more credit for getting these guys prepared in order to be ready for the stretch of games, even with that record and everything else around there.
I mean, but that's the thing too. It's interesting, Chris. Like, they rarely ever lose 2 games in a row. They rarely ever get blown out. Like, I'm trying to remember what was the last game they got blown out when Hurts was a quarterback, and with Sirianni, it's probably been not since Nick's first year, early in the season. I don't know. I mean, we're going back a ways now. Like, and I get it, the competition's killer during this stretch, but you feel like they're going to be in every one of these games.
Yeah, so it's always like a BF before a flower speech. That's pretty much where you have to go for that, because once that happened, they rooted themselves and they were good. So yeah, it's and that's what you did there, Chris.
I like that. Totally still.
It's like when you look at the fixed marks in a lot of time, who knew flowers would be the thing? But anyway, when you look at that, I think when you look at the way this team's competitive, and that's all you really want when you look at this. You see so many guys, and that's why I think Sirianni loses a lot of credit for, because you see a lot of these coaches, they come in and they can go in, rah, rah, I can do this, we can do this, or this guy can scheme up so much stuff. But the fact that he's able in tune to not only have the culture in set that keeps these guys focused, but continues to not have them smell themselves too much when this game's going, or get themselves too down if they lose a really close or tough one, like say the Jets game when he had players being accountable. I think goes a long way too. They talk about accountability. That goes a long way in just team being successful. It's shocking he doesn't get a lot more credit that you see there. You see, I mean, D'Amico's to me. And I know it's going off tangent. D'Amico Ryans, if they make the playoffs or now once he deserves to be coach of the year. But you see a first year guy, he goes that he's like, wow, okay, look at this. You look at Nick Sirianni. When you say people talk about top coaches, you sometimes don't even hear Nick Sirianni mentioned to like 5 or 6. You just have to look at the job he's done long term and see like, hey, this guy has done very well.
If I could take it off the field for a moment, Harry Roseman, I've been talking a lot about him these past several days because, it's the bye weekend. We've had some time to really sit back with, this team over the past several games, the good, the bad. We've been able to really get a good feel for the additions and also the subtractions and how that impacted the roster. What's been your thoughts on how Harry Roseman has handled damage control? Again, you lose Miles Sanders, you replace him with DeAndre Swift. You lose Isaac Samalu, you elevate Cam Jurgens, and then you draft Tyler Steen. You lose TJ Edwards, you bring in Morrow, and you try to elevate Dean, Kaiser White, Zach Cunningham, CJ Kevin Byard, Hargrave, Jalen Carter, Marcus Epps, Reed Blankenship. What's been your evaluation of how Harry Roseman has handled damage control, and do you believe he's beginning to get value for the guys he's put in compared to the guys that he's let walk?
I think when you look value-wise, I think even when it comes to the comp picks, I think that's big because you can't make a lot of these trades that they've done if you don't project yourself to have these comp picks that they have. I mean, Javon Hargrave walking, you still get Jalen Carter, and now you're still looking at a third-round pick next year if everything holds the way it is right now. Because and on top of that as well too, I like that stuff. You look at the CJ Garner. I mean, even with Isaac Seumalo, what you got there, you got Cam Jurgens to fill in for this year. You got Tyler Steen there. You got a pick coming up for the 5th round because you let him walk on that one too. He's getting a. I like the way he's being proactive about this and still getting stuff in return when he's doing that. And I think a lot of times when we see a lot of these GMs, they'll sit back and wait till an issue pop up and go that too. I like the fact that he's forward thinking or looking ahead to say, oh, this could be a potentially a problem, or doesn't let it be a problem for long to do that. Because I mean, when we look at the free side, we saw they weren't really getting when Quez was having his issues, especially after that Rams game. What's the next thing you do? Oh, Julio Jones is around here, and you start making a lot of those changes. I like the fact that he's proactive. And you need that because a lot of times these guys will sit back and go, well, I'll wait a couple of weeks. I'll see there. And the whole landscape can change within one game on somebody else's game. So I think that's been the biggest difference in him continuing to progress as a general manager because we've seen it even back 2017. But you look at that first in Harry Roseman versus what he's done now. He's a lot more proactive. I like what he's doing there. And it's helped out this team immensely. And he's talked himself into another executive of the year award to this point now. It's crazy to see the stretch that this team is under now.
Yeah, amazing to think in this day and age when we want like everything in a microwave, right? That people can actually get better if you give them a little bit of time. It's crazy to think. Last one from me, Chris. You look at the Niners, you look at the Cowboys, you look at the Lions. If you want to throw somebody else in there, feel free. But who do you look at as the biggest threat to the Eagles right now in the NFC?
I think you look at the Lions as the 1 seed. That's the biggest threat with the way that's scheduled. And the only thing that the Eagles have to hope is, I mean, I think the Lions are hoping the same thing too. You look, they're both in similar situations where those final 3 games. I mean, the Eagles have this stretch, which is critical. Yep. But even if they do get those losses, they're going to be in the same position as the Lions. Lions had the Vikings twice, two times in 3 games. Eagles had the Giants 2 times in 3 games. And you look at the way that Josh Dobbs is all of a sudden starting to play again now. All of a sudden, that factors into that thing. You got to figure the Giants. I don't think the Lions. Sorry, I don't keep the Giants. Giants are way dead. But you look at the Lions. I don't think I think they're
that's really out of the box.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. But if you look at the way the Lions right now, the way they're running, I don't think they run the table. I think there's a loss in there, and I also think they lose one of those 2 against the Vikings now too. Yeah. So as long as the Eagles handle their business, they get a couple things. I think they're the biggest threat because I think if you get the 49ers, to me, even though they went to Jacksonville, that's Jacksonville. I mean, the Jaguars still have some flaws in there. I'd feel more comfortable with the 49ers here at the link as opposed to having to go out there to California or be on the road to play that. I think the Eagles can play well enough if they had to go to Detroit if they need to. But I think the Lions still are the biggest threat to them. Okay.
Chris, if I could sneak one last one on you before you get out of here, man. Again, we appreciate you for locking in with us and spending the time the way you did. If I could sneak this in, I'm thinking about the way this Philadelphia Eagles team was winning games last season and how they're winning games this year and everything they've been to up until this point, losing the Super Bowl by 3, battling, the inertia, the physics of a Super Bowl hangover. You know what I mean? Battling all those extenuating circumstances, and also they battled injury throughout this season. And they've had some games where they've had to come back from behind at least by double digits, right? Do you believe, or do you buy into the fact that this Philadelphia Eagles team in 2023 could potentially be more mentally prepared for the rigors of a playoff versus how they were winning games last season? And does this style of football that they're playing now, although it's scary in the season, does it translate better to the playoffs more so than their style of playing last season?
I think the style of the playing there right now I think helps because it puts you, if you're consistently in those situations where you're in close games, which is like that playoff atmosphere. I think one of the best things that happened to that team, I think, happened against the Cowboys was because that was a playoff-like atmosphere. So it got those young guys to really experience, like, hey, this is what's going to be needed when it's for real, when everything counts, and when you're done. So I thought that was very beneficial. So I think that style they're playing is fine. And conversely, I think the way last year, I think they pretty much, to me, I thought they were playing with more house money and more relaxed because they know they pretty much were getting up with it. It just seemed like they were just like, well, nobody expected us to be the 1 seed anyway. All right, cool. We'll just keep continuing to do this way, just keep doing things that way. I thought that to me, I think that was, I didn't think they had as much pressure last year, and I thought it still worked that way too. I think sometimes when I think when you extended period of time, when people know you're the team and you get everybody's best and you continue that more times, it's a little rough. So that can play in your mind a little bit, like it can be mentally exhausted sometimes too. But I think overall, when you look at it too, I think last year's team had a lot easier than this year's team when it comes to in that terms.
Agree with that. Chris, keep up the good work, man. Again, love following you on Twitter, C Franklin News, NJ.com, covering the Birds, who get back at it this week and get ready for the Chiefs. Chris, always fun, man. Thanks for a couple minutes. Appreciate it.
Timmy, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Thank you so much,
brother. Appreciate you, man. You take care, sir.
See y'all later.
Chris Franklin, good information there. Good things to kick around a little bit, Tone, as we continue with the program.
Definitely.
All right, we're going to come back. We're going to look at surprises. We're going to look at some things that if you would have said to us September 9th would be happening right now on November 13th, or what is today? Yeah, 13th. I'd say you're nuts. But they're really happening, okay? Including C.J. Stroud, Josh Dobbs, Kevin O'Connell, Bill Belichick, Sam Howell, among others. So we'll get into all of that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. He is Tone DeShields in for D-Gun. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I need to tell you about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group because I don't want you going through what I went through for years trying to find the right person to handle my finances and my future. I can tell you from personal experience that somebody that I trust with my finances is Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group. Whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, you might have a small business and you're trying to get your employee benefits off the ground. That's another resource that Jim can help you with. I personally have entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollovers with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You can also email him as well, Murray, Murray.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.